What's up, everybody? It's great to be back with you again for a new edition of the By the Horns podcast presented by Toyota. And Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. So find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. Cam Smith with my man, CHSN Bulls insider, 𝗙�C Johnson. KC, good to see you again, man, and great to have this conversation because we're going to talk about some things specifically when it comes to the Chicago Bulls. And there's some great news for this Bulls team. As much as we've been doing these off-season pods and shows for the By the Horns pod, it's great to talk some things positive with this Bulls group. And the big news that came down this afternoon as we record this podcast on this Tuesday is that 𝗪𝗁𝗡 Buzelis was awarded a spot on the second team all-rookie team today, announced by the NBA 𝗙�C. And we're going to unpack that conversation, just the growth of 𝗪𝗁𝗡 throughout the season and what he's been able to do. But one, are you surprised a little bit, or just kind of like, when you saw the news, like, yeah, this kind of fits where 𝗪𝗁𝗡 was able to do in his rookie season when it comes to being awarded a spot on the second team all-rookie team?
Yeah, I think it's right where I expected him to be, Cam. I thought he'd be second team. I mean, he wasn't a full-time starter, right? So let's start there. I mean, he was the seventh leading vote getter, so he wasn't even, the runner-up to the first team. But look, second team's still an accomplishment. Bulls have had 3 draft picks from the AK Mark Eversley era, make second team in Patrick Williams, Ayo Dosunmu, and now 𝗪𝗁𝗡 Buzelis. And believe it or not, the Bulls actually have the most all-rookie selections in NBA history with 26, dating back to 62-63, which predates the Bulls. So the Bulls have some history with hitting on draft picks, and we've seen with Patrick Williams going from second team to kind of now in an underwhelming situation, an injury-plagued season, that all rookie is not a guarantee of anything. And so you want to see where 𝗪𝗁𝗡 Buzelis goes with that. You've seen where Ayo Dosunmu has gone with it. He's, until the injury this year, has been a very viable player for the Bulls. And I personally, knowing 𝗪𝗁𝗡's makeup, think this is just the start of things to come for him.
Yeah, no doubt. And also with 𝗪𝗁𝗡's makeup, it feels like he is motivated by being on the second team all-rookie team, because I'm sure in 𝗪𝗁𝗡's mind, he's like, you know what? I should have gotten more love for Rookie of the Year. I should have gotten more love for first team all-rookie. So it just feels like with his mentality, and he's cut from a different cloth, and it's just refreshing to be able to have a guy like that on your team in 𝗪𝗁𝗡. But I think for you, in saying that it's the sign of things to come, I agree with that, but it's just that motivational factor that he's going to use any type of slight against him and use it for the all season. And one of the big things for him is just putting more weight on. He mentioned that of getting stronger, but then also too, just watching how he progressed through his rookie season was impressive. And I say it's impressive because you just look at the 2 different teams that were the Chicago Bulls. You had the Zach LaVine version of the Bulls when the season began, and then you had the non-Zach LaVine version of this Bulls team. And let's just give the respect to Coby White. It was the Coby White version of the Bulls, but 𝗪𝗁𝗡 was still able to find his place, especially as his role expanded when he got the looks in the starting lineup. And I think one of the bigger games that he had this season was out in LA and Hollywood against Luka Doncic, against LeBron James, where he put in a season-high 31 points, and just seeing how he was able to just step into his own, but then also when the moment called for it against some of the better players in the league, some of the elite guys, he didn't shy away from the moment and had his full game on display.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the motivational slight, Cam, because, I mean, this was a dude who was pissed he didn't make the Rising Stars Challenge initially. It took an injury replacement for him to be in that game. And so I'm right there with you. I think, second team is I think a nice accomplishment, but I guarantee you 𝗪𝗁𝗡 is back at home right now going, I should have been on the first team. And yep. I'm also hearing this from some fans, some stuff that's come across my social media radar already saying, oh, he should have been first team because he should have been playing more at the start of the season. I always maintain that, it doesn't matter what we think. 𝗪𝗁𝗡 appreciated the way Coach Billy Donovan and his staff brought him along with that tough love and the early hooks early in the season and the lack of entitlement minutes. So, it doesn't really matter what we think. If 𝗪𝗁𝗡 was on board with it and appreciated it, that to me played a role in his development and his success in his rookie season. And you could say, well, they should have been throwing him out there to the Wolves right from the jump. I personally think that he was handled the right way. I've said that all along. And, the way he closed the season should have Bulls fans very excited for the future.
Yeah, no doubt on that, 𝗙�C, because it's one thing to just throw him to the wolves and just say, hey, go kid, learn how to swim on your own. But it's another thing to be strategic in how you want him to develop. And I think that's been the biggest thing of this front office, and especially Billy Donovan and him coming into the season. And speaking of Billy Donovan, as that question was thrown out there about just 𝗏 and how he can develop and get experience and just kind of get that growth process sped up in some ways, but just happen a little bit sooner than some others' timetables. And Billy just answered it. It's like there's different ways to get experience other than just playing on the floor, like with film study, right? Of just knowing how to be an NBA player when it comes to how to handle your body. What do you do on back-to-backs? So those are also ways that you can get experience and just grow as a player as opposed to just getting the actual minutes on the floor. And so they understand the importance of 𝗏 because he's the foundation of their future, right? I mean, I think the biggest and really not biggest, but the greatest thing about what 𝗏 was able to do, especially in the second half of the season, was really open up the eyes of what he is and what he will be. And I think that's going to be a guy that is going to be a open court, finish at a high level, finish over the top of people, but in the half court, be able to understand how to play with the four other guys on the floor, move without the basketball, and get his baskets. But we're still talking about a guy, KC, that was drafted 11th overall. Like, and that's the thing about this. Like, so if you look at just where he was drafted and some expectations for guys drafted in that back half of the lottery and kind of late parts of the lottery, you're not expecting them to finish second team all rookie or just get those nods and even get 15 votes for first place, which 𝗏 got. So like those are things where if you're a Bulls fan, you have to appreciate how he was brought along. One, the talent that 𝗏 has, but how he was brought along by this franchise. And I think that speaks volumes, one, to Billy Donovan, but also just the player development and this front office of this Bulls team.
Yeah, you mentioned the second half, Cam. Let's get to some numbers. In his final 35 games, which were 31 starts, he averaged 13.3 points, 4.5 rebounds, 1.7 assists. And to me, the big number is 1.1 blocks in 26.7 minutes. And that right there is where I personally am most intrigued to see where 𝗏 goes from here, because Bulls don't have a lot of rim protection. They don't have a lot of two-way players on this roster. And I've always admired 𝗏's attention to detail at the defensive end and his desire to give voice to that end. He does not talk about his offense all the time. He talks about defense almost as consistently as he talks about his offense. And, you know, he puts film study into the defensive end too. And you mentioned those high-profile matchups he had. He took something from every one of those, and he relished those experiences. So that, to me, is where the intrigue and excitement for this kid's future lies, is his ability to impact the game at both ends. We've seen the athleticism with the dunks and the ability to run in transition at the offensive end, but defensively, as he learns this league, learns player tendencies, learns weak side rotations, learns how to avoid foul trouble, all those things, I think his potential to be a disruptor and a shot blocker is just going to obviously improve drastically.
KC, man, that is like my love language right there when you talk about defense and basketball, because just kind of cut from the cloth that I'm cut from and playing for the programs that I played for at the old Gordon Tech, where defense was always the first responsibility. And the same thing as Southern Illinois with my Salukis there. And one of the big reasons why we made the Sweet 16 in 2007 is that, yeah, you can show me your offense, and that's great. Like, guys can get buckets. I get that. But for a rookie, a 19-year-old at the time that is willing to put in the film study to get better on the defensive end, and then also when he's putting the work in with the film study to transfer that study from the film onto the court, that speaks volumes of just 𝗏's want to. Like, he wants to get better, and definitely on the defensive end. So offense is great, and it's no knock to some of these guys in the league that can score. But if you're talking, again, with a guy that we believe is cut from a different cloth, we talk about it with his mentality, but also with his play, he wants to be a complete basketball player. And that's the refreshing thing about 𝗏. It's not just him trying to get buckets. He wants to not only get buckets, but then on the other end, shut you down, or at least slow you down to the point where you're ineffective in the ball game. And so seeing his numbers as you rattle them off, especially what he was able to do defensively, and being a guy that also had just his health, right, was able to play the amount of games that he played. I believe he had 31 starts this season as well, but tied for the most games played on the Bulls roster. This is a guy that has understood how to take care of his body, how to transfer what he's watching in film to the floor, but then also be able to learn from his mistakes. I mean, you go back to the first game against the Boston Celtics, KC, and he got one of his welcome to the NBA moments, right? So, but from that time on, he understood, like, look, if I want to play, especially for Coach Billy Donovan, I got to learn how to play defense and help my guys out on rotation. And it's not just on-ball defense, but in terms of just how he rotates when he's off ball. And you saw that growth as well. And that's why for him, the future is so bright in what he can be. And he understands that too, Casey.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the 80 games. I had actually forgotten about that. I mean, that's an impressive stat for a rookie, learning the league, the demands. Availability to me is a skill, particularly in today's NBA. So that's impressive. And I remember talking to him, and I've shared this anecdote many times, both on our broadcast and also on this podcast. I remember going to him in January and said, "Do you believe in the rookie wall?" And he said, "No, I believe in growing pains." And I loved that answer. I absolutely love that answer because he's like, "Look, man, I know I'm going to have ebbs and flows in my rookie year, but the way he closed and got through the so-called rookie wall, which is a real thing in the NBA because the number of games just drastically increased from college, or in his situation, the G League Ignite schedule. It's a significant jump." And as you mentioned, there was kind of the learning the rhythms of the league that's part of his development too. And that's where he has credited the coaching staff again for the way he was brought along. So to play 80 games, that to me is impressive beyond what he did in terms of stats on the court and his impact off the court. Availability was big to me. And I know we're going to get into the draft here in a little bit. I mean, Modest talked to us after the draft lottery about how well he knows this class, and you did some nice reporting at the combine, talking to guys who brought him up unsolicited about how he's had influence on them or shot it out in their ear and stuff. So, the Bulls got him at 11 last year. They've got 12 this year. Just underscores the need as the Bulls ask for patience and go through this next roster iteration. It underscores the need to hit on these draft picks. The Bulls look like they've done so here with Modest Buzelis at 11. They're going to need to do so again at number 12 in June for sure.
Yeah, no doubt, Casey. And I love that segue to the NBA draft and the NBA draft combine and the media availability. One more note for Modest is I want to make sure that people understand this. He became the 5th rookie in NBA history and only Bulls rookie to total at least 95 3-pointers made and 75 blocks in a rookie season. So again, just he's put together some nice stats, man, and just for sure well past the eye test a long time ago. So salute to Modest Buzelis being selected second team all rookie in the NBA in his rookie campaign. So he's just scratching the surface of what he will be. And so going back to the NBA draft and the media availability and just the reports that we had from the Marriott Marquis down there. It was fun just tag teaming with you, KC, and getting these great sounds and these great conversations that we got from multiple guys. And looking at that position at 12, I mean, there are plenty of options for this Bulls team to really zero in on. And it's whether do you go with need? Do you go with fit? I mean, you have possibilities, and I've seen some mocks out there of different names that will and should be available, but, they're mocks, right? So that's what you expect. But for you, KC, who are you really zeroing in on and focusing on for the Bulls at 12?
Yeah, I mean, I know you can't draft just for need, but I still come back to how many guards are on this roster, and I do think there are going to be some intriguing front court players there at 12. You can't predict how the draft board is going to shake down because you're not driving the draft at 12, but there's just so many people in that range of like 8 to 15 that I think somebody maybe unexpected, almost not to Modest's level, but somebody unexpected might be able to be there for you. I've talked to some people, some scouts I trust, and some people that see college basketball way more than me, even in the time since we were at the combine together, Cam. And, I was really high on Colin Murray-Boyles just for his defensive versatility. And I also loved his media session. I thought he was fantastic from a media perspective, which I know is only one small part of it, but we focus on that a little bit. But I've heard a lot of concerns about his shooting ability from the scouts I've talked to since the combine to now. I'm not saying that's a deal killer or a selection killer. I'm just saying that's a consistent theme I've heard from the people I've talked to. And he alluded to his need to get better in that department. So I don't know if that drops his stock or what have you. Another thing that kind of jumped out in my reporting that I've been hearing is it does depend on who you talk to a little bit, but you do hear kind of different levels of tiers, and the first tier is kind of 1 through 4. Cutoff's usually about 4 there, and then the second tier I've heard either between 5 and 8 or 5 and 9. And then it goes to a third tier, which is where obviously the Bulls will be selecting. So I do think there's going to be talent there. I don't think 𝗦𝗫 Buzelis was, sandbagging us when he said you're going to be able to find a hidden gem at 12 because he knows this class so well. But I personally would like to see the Bulls select the front court player.
I'm with you, KC. Let me try and see if I can possibly throw this name out to you. And if you look at his size, you would think, oh yeah, front court player. But obviously we go beyond the surface of this thing, KC. But just knowing how he plays, 𝗂𝗎𝗓 from BYU. He's a guy at 6'9" that could help in terms of his skill set with this Bulls team. And for me, adding to the guard depth of this Bulls team for sure is just like, all right, what are we doing? How many guards are we running? Right? Are we running an AU team? What's going on right now? But I think 𝗻's skill set could help the Bulls. Not saying that for me, I would draft him at 12. I'm with you. I would go front court for this team because you need that. And depending on who's available, like I wish, I'm sure you wish this as well, KC, that we had a crystal ball and could look into it and say, okay, this player would be available that would help the Bulls front court, if that player will be available to help the Bulls front court. But just depending on if certain names are going at that point, like a 𝗁𝗲 or 𝗏𝗏 or a potentially another big like Asa Newell is going as well at that point, and even Derek Queen, if they're going at that point, I'm thinking like, man, okay, well, could 𝗂𝗎 be a guy that could be drafted for this Bulls team? And there are similarities when it comes to 𝗻and also Josh Giddey. When I mentioned that name on the Chicago Lead and that is going on social media, there's some people are making the comparisons to Josh Giddey because they could be similar in terms of who they are and their makeup and style of play when it comes to guys that can rebound the basketball and push in transition. But from things that I've read and talking to a couple of people as well and scouts, they believe that he can shoot the basketball a lot better than what he showed at BYU. And when you look at his three-point shooting numbers, they're at the lower 30% mark. But when you watch him, and if you watched him during the NCAA tournament, he really showed up and showed out for BYU, and the guy that is going to be comfortable coming into a pro-style offense because that's what he ran at BYU, not only just the NBA-style offense, but also European-style offense and who he is and what he brings. So it's just an intriguing name for me and prospect, and depending if it falls that way, if those front court players are taken, then I would start to look at 𝗂𝗎 if I was in that position, and I'm not in that position, but just kind of seeing what and how it could potentially play out for the Bulls.
Yeah, I mean, it's cliche, but you got to be ready for anything, right? You don't know how the draft board is going to shake down in front of you. People are going to get tired of hearing us talk about this, but there's no way the Bulls went into draft night last year thinking they were going to have a chance at 𝗦𝗫 Buzelis at 11. Yeah. So crazy things can happen in the draft. Obviously, it's their job to scout everybody and be prepared, have your draft board, and then just see as the names drop off the list who's atop your draft board when your turn comes up. But one thing that we've talked about that I do know is for sure is that they are cognizant of their play style and their ability to want to wear teams down by playing fast, guys that can run, who are athletic. That's going to be a premium in their scouting profile. And as I mentioned before, they do lack rim protection. They lack two-way ability. And so obviously, if you can get an athlete who can run the floor and has defensive potential, that's probably the safer outcome, the safer pick. So we'll see. I mean, we're going to be talking a lot about the draft over the next month. It's going to take twists and turns. Some news will leak out about workouts. I always put a little bit of tap the brakes on that. That's obviously the Bulls' job to get as many players as they can inside the Advocate Center. That's their job. But it still some news can be gleaned from that. Maybe a guy comes back for a second workout, then your antenna goes up a little bit, things like that. So we'll have our eyes and ears open to it. I mean, I just can't emphasize this enough. They have to hit on first round picks moving forward. There can't be misses. I mean, that's where we're at with this roster iteration. we heard AK ask for patience. Okay, if fans are going to give him patience, he's got to reward them by hitting on a first-round pick.
Yeah, I'm with you, KC, man. It can't be any half-stepping, no half-stepping at all when it comes to these picks and making sure that they're turning out to be guys similar to 𝗏 Buzelis, where they're showing up and showing out in their rookie campaign, but also with a lot more room to grow, and we'll be able to fulfill those expectations in a number of different ways. So if you don't have the alert set up for KC's social media page, then I don't know what you're doing. Go ahead and do it right now on X, because it would just be smart of you, wise of you, to do that right now if it's not already set up. And if it's set up for people already, then you're ahead of the game and making sure you're doing that, because the information will be there and KC will be dropping that, especially on the By the Horns podcast and, of course, his own show, Casey Johnson's Fast Break. So we'll try and have you covered on all things, especially if we start to, get word of certain players that are coming in for these draft workouts for the Bulls.
Well, I'm looking forward to a couple ISO cams as we get closer to the draft. You got to single out a couple prospects that you like, Cam.
I got you, KC. You know what? Say less, man. If the people want it, and I'll definitely make sure I hand it over to them, man, because they need that to bring it all down so I can get, come out of the sports jacket and kind of get in my defensive stance, but not really playing the defense because the body's different now.
Well, at least I'm allergic to defense even in my prime, so at least we got one defensive-minded player on this podcast.
Hey, we got one end of the court already taken care of. You handle the offense, we're good to go.
I'm not on a first name defense. I'm not on a first name basis with defense. I'll just put it that way.
All good, KC. All good, man. I think they made NBA Jam for us, man. If there was an NBA Jam version of sports media people, we will be on that thing and we'll represent the city of Chicago and the Bulls with that one, man. You mentioned with just the play style of this Bulls team when you say they want athleticism, guys that can get up and down, but they just wear you down defensively. I can't help but think of the NBA playoffs and a couple of teams that really fit that mold. Actually, I say a few teams. I'm not going to say a couple of teams, but a couple of teams that really fit that mold in terms of matching pace of play, wearing you down defensively, and just coming at you in waves. So one, obviously, Oklahoma City, that team, and then also in the Eastern Conference, the Indiana Pacers, KC. It feels like they are the prototype for what teams want to do when it comes to having a star or superstar and then a cast of guys in that starting lineup, and then off of the bench that can just play both ends of the floor and just play at such a wild pace, controlled pace, but also a wild pace that you just can't do anything with them in terms of a 7-game series where you're just worn down.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely not at the level defensively that OKC is. That said, yeah. I love their ability. You watch that the Cleveland series, they had 3 guys in the backcourt picking up people. I mean, they just were like, and it's like you look up and they bring in like these guys off the bench, these wings. They just keep coming at you with like athletic two-way wings. And they are a better offensive team than a defensive team, whereas you could make the case that OKC is a better defensive team than an offensive team. But I'm with you, man. I love watching the Pacers play. They are built for modern NBA basketball with athletes and wings. And I mean, look, I've always liked Mathurin, and he's coming off the bench for them now. I mean, that just shows how deep they are. And Carlisle is obviously an elite coach. I am so excited for these conference finals. And I mean, since we're taping this on the day of Game 1 before the West, we got to bring our predictions, don't we? We got to put ourselves out there and drop the receipts and see how right or wrong we are. So I guess who's going first, you or me?
You know what? I'll go first, KC, since you threw out the offer and the challenge there. And I'm going to stand 10 toes down with my picks. These are things that I've said on the Chicago Lead and other networks when I've come on as a guest. But I will say that I have a Knicks Timberwolves NBA Finals.
Whoa.
I say that, I know I get the reaction. You're not the only one to react like that. I get it, especially when it comes to the Minnesota Timberwolves side of things. I'll get to the Knicks in a little bit and my concerns when it comes to making that prediction. But with Minnesota and just who they are and just the physical brand of basketball that they could play against OKC, I think that they, in my opinion, if I was on that Timberwolves team, I prefer to play Oklahoma City than the Denver Nuggets. And I say that because you have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is the presumptive NBA MVP. I'm just still waiting for the league to just announce that thing so we can just stop saying presumptive MVP and just SGA is the MVP. But they have him and an elite scorer, no doubt about it, leads all players in the playoffs in points per game. He's averaging just under 30, like right at 29 points per game in the playoffs, which is impressive. But after Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, especially from the series that we saw against the Denver Nuggets, you have the other guys like Jalen Williams that have their issues when it comes to scoring the basketball. And Jalen Williams is going through his own growth when it comes to just being at the forefront in the playoffs, not during the season, because we saw him in the season all-star, like he was able to step up, but the playoffs are a different season and the responsibilities are heightened. But he struggled against the Denver Nuggets team that, for me, is not at the same level defensively as what the Minnesota Timberwolves will bring, especially we talk about waves with OKC and Indiana. I think that Minnesota can do the same thing with their front court players and slowing guys like Jalen Williams down. So if you are Minnesota, if you decide to say, we'll allow Shai to do his thing, but everyone else doesn't eat, or try and slow Shai down and force someone else to be that star for the Thunder, whether it's Jalen Williams or Chet Holmgren, I think it'll be tougher for that Thunder team to survive, KC. So that's why I'm going Minnesota. Like, I'll throw in the Ant Edwards aspect of it. Julius Randle has impressed me this season. Like, I did not see and really didn't expect this version of Julius Randle ever. And when I say ever, I mean a guy that is not very just ball dominant. He's able to move without the basketball. Defensively, you see the effort there as well. And if his shot is not falling, KC, he's not just being a guy that disappears on the court. He's able to do other things to help his team win. So it's been very impressive to see what Julius Randle has been able to do. And you throw in the Jaden McDaniels potential X factor, and I'm not gonna shy away from this, KC. I'm not going to get a look from you. But I really believe that Rudy Gobert will be the X factor in this series for Minnesota to push them to the NBA Finals, just because of how if Minnesota decides to make this more of a half-court game, and they really have to, and not to say that they can't get out and run, but you're looking at Rudy Gobert rim protecting, but then also rebounding the basketball and nullifying anything that Chet Holmgren, who has a lot of pressure on himself coming into the season, being from Minnesota and playing against his hometown team, is up against. So that's what I'm going with on the Minnesota side of things.
I love it. So much to unpack. And look, I'm a Rudy Gobert fan. I actually think he's almost become underrated at this stage of his career because people, you know, point out his weakness and stuff. And look, Minnesota's, you didn't even mention Mike Conley. I mean, they're an incredibly well-built team. I mean, they're just – so let me emphasize this. I think both series are going to be fantastic. I'm picking both series to go 7 games. Yes. But this is going to be good podcast content. My surprise was actually more at the East. You're going to be surprised, but I'm going Pacers OKC. So this is good podcast content. We have no overlap here. And yes, that is me saying, and I'm a little hesitant on this one because that is me saying Pacers win Game 7 on the road in Madison Square Garden against one of the most intense fan bases in the league. And let's face it, probably a pretty tight whistle for the Pacers in Game 7 on the road. I'm not into conspiracy theories, but let's just say that will be a tightly officiated game. So I do have a little hesitation predicting the Pacers to win a Game 7 on the road, but I come back to this. I just think the Pacers have a deeper bench. They can come at you with more options. I know the Knicks have proven they can handle the heavy workload. Mikal Bridges is a freak of nature. Josh Hart looks like the Energizer Bunny out there. They don't need as good of a bench as Indiana, but I like size. And look, Knicks have size too, but I like size and I like depth. And I just think Indiana, it's going to be an incredible series. But I'm going Indiana. And then I think that I'm with you. Everything you said about Minnesota, I fully support. I'm less convicted on my West pick, but I just am leaning towards a 68-win team with home court advantage. They are younger. They're not as battle-tested, but their depth and the X factor of Alex Caruso, I just give a slight lead to the Thunder. Either way, man, I think we agree to this. I think both series are going to be fantastic. Yeah. And I cannot wait to see who gets more right when these guys
because we got the receipts. So when we have the NBA final set, we'll run this thing back and just go into it in that conversation and just have some fun with it. But I'm with you when it comes to just Oklahoma City and Alex Caruso, just how he was able to defend Nikola Jokic was just like, I'm watching Game 7, KC, and it's just the effort. Effort is one thing, but I think that it's a disservice to Alex Caruso when you just say, oh, he plays hard, he just gets after on the defensive end. there's a defensive basketball IQ that you need to have to make the plays that Alex Caruso makes, especially when you're guarding a guy that has 100 pounds on you in Nikola Jokic. Like, there's no way that you can really nullify him, especially for good parts of the game, to allow your team to go on an offensive run the way that Alex Caruso did. It was so impressive. And I'm just like, man, I miss that guy. I miss that guy, Caruso.
He did a lot of. He tried to do a lot of his work early, obviously, because he gives up so much in height and weight. And look, I put something on Twitter about how it was a masterclass in defensive technique and, to your phrase, IQ. And a lot of people clap back saying, "Oh, he's mauling him." Well, guess what? The refs let you get away with a lot in the playoffs. That's how the playoffs are. And by the way, he's ceding 100 pounds, so they're probably going to give Alex Caruso even a little bit more. So he played within the rules. He took whatever the refs gave him. And, I mean, did he stop Jokic? No, nobody does. But did he make things not fun for Jokic? Absolutely. It was right. That Game 7 was absolutely incredible watching him, for sure.
All right, before we get things wrapped up in a little bit on the By the Horns podcast, I just want to make this point, and this is my one concern about the Knicks against the Pacers. If you go back to the post-game sound from Cavs head coach Kenny Atkinson after the series was complete and Indiana advanced on, he said something that was so powerful. He basically talked about Indiana, how they remind him of a college basketball team. And he said, this is no disrespect to the Pacers, but he was saying they pick you up full court. They are relentless defensively. They run. They attack you in waves. He said he didn't have the graph in front of him, but he was just saying that, but his team and the rest of the NBA plays at a certain pace, which is about here for those watching on the CHSN YouTube page. But he says that the Indiana Pacers are way above that in terms of how they play and the style of play. That is just, he kind of had to chuckle and laugh at himself, like, I've never seen this before. And like, Kenny Atkinson has been around the game for a long time and one of the great basketball minds that we have in today's game. But it was just, when he said that, it was so profound, KC. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this Pacers team is dangerous. Yeah. NBA Finals, NBA Championship dangerous. So the Knicks have their work cut out for them. I'm worried about games 3 and 4, especially game 4 back at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, to see just how those legs for OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, Jalen Brunson look when you get to that situation. So hopefully, I mean, for Knicks fans, I know that they're praying to the basketball gods, to the Walt Clyde Frazier shrine that they have in their closets, that the Knicks can get back to the NBA Finals and win an NBA championship. They need to win the first 2 games at Madison Square Garden. I think it would be in their best interest to do that, as opposed to splitting and going back to Gainsbridge Fieldhouse, because it could get very dangerous over in Naptown for this Knicks team. And they remember how it was last year against the Pacers in the second round. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the By the Horns podcast. For my man, KC Johnson, I'm Cam Smith. We appreciate you rocking with us, and know that the By the Horns podcast is presented by Toyota. Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand, so find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. Hey, enjoy the conference finals. We'll have more information coming your way when it comes to the draft. And again, salute to 𝗦𝗫 Buzelis being selected second team all-rookie in the National Basketball Association. We'll talk to everybody soon.